And so I think it will be very interesting, but hopefully a fairly light lift. It's House Bill 2261, providing Kansas Highway Patrol officer majors to be within the unclassified service under the Kansas Civil Service Act. And we will begin with an overview from our reviser, David Weiss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee. House Bill 2261 would provide that the Highway Patrol majors would be within the unclassified service under the Kansas Civil Service Act and provide a permanent status rank that Highway Patrol Superintendent, Assistant Superintendent, and majors would be returned to after holding such positions. The bill specifically amends KSA 742113. That's the statute that establishes the Highway Patrol and provides for employment qualifications and procedures for Highway Patrol officers. Currently, the superintendent and assistant superintendent of the Highway Patrol are within the unclassified service. This would then add the rank of majors, those majors to the unclassified service. And then also specify that when the superintendent, assistant superintendent, or a major fulfills their term and leaves that respective position, then the officer would return to a rank with permanent status not lower than the rank held when the officer was first appointed to the position of superintendent, assistant superintendent, or major. The provisions of HB 2261 would take effect on July 1st, 2025. Also note that the House made no amendments to the bill and passed it by a vote of 118 to 1 on February 19th, 2025. And I can stand for any questions.
Committee, what questions do we have for the reviser? Senator Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And maybe this is for the proponents of the bill. What is the advantage for them to have this change in status, unclassified status? I'm not familiar with that term and what that means for them.
Yep. Madam Chair, Senator, I think I'd probably let the proponents speak to the advantages of making the majors unclassified.
Very good. Thank you.
Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just kind of a technical question. The bill I know was heard in the House and the Transportation Committee. Just curious why it landed here. Maybe that's a question for someone else.
Yeah, that would be a question for the Senate President's office who refers the bills. So.
Okay, just seemed a little different, so.
Yeah, I don't know. It showed up on our list, and we looked at it and said, this is a good bill. We're going to work it. So other questions for the reviser? Seeing none, thank you very much. Committee, before we move on, I failed to yield to Senator Alley, who has a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today, we're pleased to have a page with us from Winfield, Olivia Cramp from Winfield. Say hi, Olivia. We're pleased to have you here today. Thank you very much for coming.
Welcome to committee. Senator Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't realize we were doing this committee, but I also have Hadrian Zurich, and he is from Pittsburgh, Kansas, and I have a feeling that he will be here sooner rather than later. So.
Welcome to both of you, and it's always so nice to see young people interested and engaged in the process. So, okay, we will now move on to our proponent testimony, and we have Merle Riedel, Executive Officer from the Kansas Highway Patrol. Welcome to committee.
Good morning, ma'am, members of the committee. Thank you for hearing this bill today. We are excited that the Committee on Government Efficiency had this bill to hear. I am Merle Riedel. I am Executive Officer for the Highway Patrol. Also joining me today is Colonel Eric Smith, who is Superintendent of the Highway Patrol, and we also have Sherry Mackey, the Deputy Secretary for Business Operations. So I am going to be referring to the testimony that you have before you. The Kansas Highway Patrol appreciates the opportunity to provide testimony supporting House Bill 2261. The bill would amend KSA 742113 to clarify that a Kansas Highway Patrol employee holding the rank of major is within the unclassified service under the Kansas Civil Service Act. The bill also affirms that when a major's appointment ends, the employee shall return to the rank with permanent status not lower than the rank the person held when appointed to that major position. So the Kansas Civil Service Act divides employees into classified and unclassified services. Classified employees are selected among merit through a competitive process and afforded certain employment protection. So this would be largely most of the public safety agencies, kind of the standard classified position that you might think about. Unclassified employees can be directly hired and serve at the pleasure of the appointing authority. So KSA 7421-113 designates which KHP ranks are within the classified service and which are within the unclassified service. So that statute specifies that the superintendent and assistant superintendent are within the unclassified service. So they are at-will employees that serve at the leisure of their appointing authority. The statute also clearly stipulates that employees in the rank of captain and below are within the classified service. So they are paid through a defined pay matrix. They are part of a sort of a statewide classified and structure of employees for state government. However, due to the ambiguous language, it's not altogether entirely clear that KSA 7421-13 designates the position of major as within the classified or unclassified service. This ambiguity has resulted in litigation and uncertainty regarding whether majors are eligible for the Kansas Highway Patrol Career Progression Salary Plan. That plan is available only to classified employees, so it's really unclear, if you cannot determine the status of the majors, whether this classified employee plan applies to them or not. KHP employs 6 majors, currently have 6 majors. All of them are have voluntarily accepted an unclassified employment status upon appointment. So this bill would not impact any current majors. They are all voluntarily appointed to unclassified. The bill makes no changes to these employees' existing unclassified status. The bill also does not impact the protections afforded to the superintendent, assistant superintendent, or majors should their appointed positions end. So should there be a leadership change and the employees in these positions are not selected to retain their rank, they would transition to their previously held rank within the permanent status of the classified service. Just as a reminder, the Highway Patrol follows sort of a military rank structure. We have 1 colonel and 1 lieutenant colonel. Below them, we have the majors, so they are senior to the remaining structures, or the captains, lieutenants, and troopers below them. So the majors would generally be considered an executive level position, equivalent to a deputy secretary. This defining them as unclassified would be consistent with most other state agencies that term an executive position to be an at-will position. So this would put us consistent with most other state agencies. The Kansas Highway Patrol supports House Bill 2261, which clarifies the status language to affirm that KHP majors are within the unclassified service. I would note that we did consult with the Office of Personnel Services within the Department of Administration when developing some language for this bill, and they gave us very useful feedback, and I believe they even submitted some written proponent testimony. So we are excited that that bill passed out of the House with a very positive vote of 118 yeas. And Madam Chair, that concludes my review, so I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. And he is the only proponent, so questions for Mr. Riedel. Senator Johnson.
Scott, I think you cleared up my question regarding classified and unclassified. Is there any advantage to being one or the other? I'm just kind of curious.
So being part of the classified service under the Kansas Civil Service Act does provide you certain protections consistent with all of those classified positions. So if there is termination or discipline issues, there's an opportunity to appeal to a Kansas Civil Service Board. That statute would all remain the same. We're not asking to adjust that at all. Those are all protections that apply to classified employees. I wouldn't say whether there's advantage or disadvantage. perhaps the advantage is that it clarifies to captains who potentially could be promoted to major. It clarifies what their status will be when they are promoted to major. Then it's very clear to all of them accepting the positions. And it also affirms that they have certain protections that should a new superintendent come in and decide to assemble a new leadership team, which is certainly their prerogative, those majors that were previously holding those positions do return back to that classified pool.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? So, Mr. Riedel, when we were talking about this earlier, is it fair to say there's ambiguity currently in the language? This clarifies that and basically just codifies what you guys are already doing in practice, and it just removes any confusion regarding this issue. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, Madam Chair. Everything you just said is spot on. That is what this bill is doing. It is simply clarifying that majors are in unclassified status, which is what we do by practice currently. And so it would just make that change permanent in statute.
Okay. Committee, anything else? Seeing none, thank you so much for being here. And as was referenced, we do have proponent testimony from Craig Knowlton, Deputy Secretary, Director of Personnel Services, the Department of Administration. So I encourage you to look at that. Committee, there are no neutral and no opponents to this bill. And I would just throw this out for the committee's will. If there's no objection, I would propose working this, but I will yield to the committee's will. Is there objection to working it, Senator Thompson?
No, in fact, I would propose that we do work this and maybe even consider, if there's, depending on the vote, putting it on the consent calendar, perhaps. I'll see.
Okay, so is that a motion to
Yeah, well, I didn't want to.
pass this out and put it on consent calendar?
I didn't want to supersede the chairman's desire to work, and so I was waiting for your.
Hey, we're efficient here.
Okay,
So if
we
you
are
wanna
efficient.
Make that a motion.
Yes, I would move that we pass out House Bill 2261 favorably for passage, and because if it's of a non-controversial nature, we place it on the consent calendar.
We have a motion. We have a second by Senator Thomas. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, we will pass that out. Oh, yes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Okay, it passes. There we go. Thank you so much, committee. Now, next week, we were going to have a meeting. I want to draw your attention on Tuesday. The conferees could not come Tuesday. They looked at their calendar, had a conflict. So we're going to move them to Wednesday. We're going to double up Wednesday and move quickly. So we will not be meeting Tuesday as originally planned because of the conflict, but we will meet Wednesday and Thursday. So just want to let you know. All right, seeing no other business, we are adjourned.